The Sydney Terrace is probably one of the hardest problems.
There's overlooking.
So inflexible.
Would I bring my culture to it?
These buildings are generally quite poorly insulated.
Sustainability is not just an environmental concern.
The terraces are hard to give people ownership of.
On the laneways that people build garages or sheds or things that they shouldn't have.
Do the corners have to look the way they are now?
Why we're keeping these terraces.
In this video, we'll explore the problems and principles to revitalize Terrace district in Sydney. Since terrace houses were introduced to Australia in the 19th century, they are still often found in the older inner city areas. Even though these precincts are usually heritage significant, many problems have arisen around them with the unprecedented urbanization. We aim to improve social density and quality of life for people to enjoy life in the terrace house neighborhood. However, the design guides in New South Wales, including ADG, MDDG, UDG, and HDG, don't provide the guidelines to renew this kind of typology. Therefore, it is necessary to establish a new set of toolkits to address these problems.
By analyzing the existing policies and case studies, the toolkit comes up with three things: habitability, adaptability, and belonging, following with 9 principles.
As we are facing unprecedented urbanization, affordability should be promoted as a principle rather than merely a consideration. And it mainly responds to SDG 11.1. The first approach is to research the local demographic to comprehend the real need for social and/or affordable housing. As existing layout of terraces are fairly rigid, we need to consider whether to break and join terraces so that larger houses or even apartment complex can be formed.
The second consideration of habitability is about dynamic. It responds to SDG 11.7 and it has 4 approaches. The strategy is to introduce the flow of air and light to break up the stuffy interior of the room, along with the greenery, bringing more vibrancy to the terrace district. The illustration in the center shows the east-west orientation affords best solar access to both aspects of the terrace. Introduce the idea of light well and skylights above stairs. We want to create an architectural volume that spreads natural light throughout both levels and doesn't take anything away from the limited floor area. Through relocating and updating kitchen, bathroom, dining and laundry areas to maximize the interior functions and available space while also responding to the context. The backyard now is directly accessible from the living or dining spaces, providing private access to the outdoors and an opportunity for outdoor passive recreation. This section is about the renewal of the central lane between 2 rows of houses. Depending on the volume and role in the traffic network, it is redesigned and enhanced as shared streets, which can meet the desires of adjacent residents and function as a public space for recreation and socializing. Greening is deficient in the terrace district due to narrow spaces. The greening improvement strategy for our site include on-top surface, ground, and facade of terrace housing, with plants adapted to terrace inner city environment and ornamental in winter.
Symbiosis is operationally a biological term, but in our toolkit, it describes a close relationship between diverse society members. No matter you are the single person or have a large family, you are the elderly or the young, the rich or the poor, all are welcomed to engage into their community and the society. The design approach includes transfer the street corner into commercial space, transfer the inner land into communal space, the part 1 dwelling into a family house and a shared space, merge neighboring houses into the community of old and young mutual assistance. This diagram helps to transfer the commercial space by refining the interior layout, the facade of the terrace house, and the landscape of the street corner. With the consideration of continually developing household, this toolkit targets to adapt the house to all stages of life. For those young property owners who has loan stress, the terrace house could be divided into a family and a rental space, so the house owner can earn some extra to help their family finance. For the growing family with more kids or with elderly parents to take care of, more rooms are needed. So, 2 bedrooms are added to the ground floor and the attic. Thirdly, for those elderly property owners with limited mobility or suffer from loneliness, there comes a potential choice for them to merge their units, live together, and share the spare space to people in need. This diagram shows that 3 houses are horizontally merged and vertically divided into mutual assistance community of the old and young.
Incremental is about allocate expandable spaces at the beginning. Provide framework and regulations for terrace to be customized and self-extended over time. It respond to SDG 11.3. Not only these occupants don't have to relocate themselves when they have more money and or their household expand, but also the value of property itself can increase, which become an incentive for self-growth. Moreover, continuous support to the individuals and communities after initial construction completed is another important intervention.
The description of sustainability in SDG includes environmental sustainability, economic sustainability, and social sustainability. This design principle sustainable targets an environmental friendly developing solution to the aging terrace house district in New South Wales. The toolkit responds to environmental sustainability from 4 angles: construction material, building system, energy efficiency, and green infrastructure. This diagram shows the water management system of the community and tests the toolkit by maximizing natural lighting and natural ventilation with light well.
The next main principle is about the sense of belonging, which including 3 considerations. The first one is about dignity. It responds to SDG 11.1 and it has 3 approaches. The immediate proximity of individual houses within a terraced block requires greater focus on achieving visual and acoustic privacy. In our site, the back-to-back house distances between houses are less than 15 meters. Apart from utilizing tall planting as landscape screen to obscure views between houses, staggered facades, recessed balconies, and louvres on windows also can be utilized for privacy solution. Safe and attractive shared driveways and accessways with good quality interfaces to public streets can reduce crime, engender pride, and a sense of ownership. This illustration shows a 2-way residential street with parking on both sides. Residential streets might be designed with minimal sidewalks, limited vehicular access, and low volumes, allowing them to operate informally as slow zones. Often a combination of parking solutions is required, especially as the number of terraced houses increases on a site. 3 main parking options are proposed in this section. And due to the no-car future projection, it strengthens our argument to pedestrianize the rear lane, since terraces in Surrey Hills have good access to other forms of transportation. So only on-street parking and grouped parking are remained in our synthesized scenario of Terrace District. The second consideration is cultural identity. It responds to SDG 11.4 and it has 3 approaches. The Terrace District is usually within heritage context and is heritage significant, hence it is important to preserve also develop the culture and features of terrace houses, and enhance residents' sense of belonging. The form and appearance of an individual terraced house will be largely driven by the form of the terraced block. This section therefore sets out the issues associated with both the house and the block, and which include height, massing, and facade articulation, and how they help to enhance the existing character of the local area. A terraced house is made up of several single-family homes built directly next to each other, each separated by partitions. When users are considering the terrace house renewal, layouts of traditional terraces should also be taken into considerations. Making full use of the physical spaces of buildings and public spaces, events and industries should be introduced as accelerants for gradual urban regeneration. The newly introduced events and cultural spaces support and promote each other so as to develop the culture and features of Terrace District and enhance residents' sense of belonging.
Participatory can both nurture integrated settlement as well as foster democratic and inclusive society. It responds to SDG 11.3. This principle, architect act as a mediator to bring both elites and grassroots into the design process and coordinate all key stakeholders to reach design consensus. When it comes to large-scale renewal like pedestrianizing real lane and transform multiple terraces into apartment complex, local council and/or state government should be involved. However, if the alterations are smaller scale, stakeholders can be limited to individual homeowners and communities. Further, it is important to provide diverse typologies to accommodating different ownership needs to become an inclusive community.